course. And the point is, people like me do those sort of activities because there's an adrenaline and risk component to them. Now, we're not wanting to stop any of that, and all we expect of you is that within your level of competence, assessments of that particular face have been done or whatever to ensure that from your perspective it was safe for the activity you were doing. So in that situation, we'd want to know how you went about assessing the face. You know, and it's, you know, like for example, you'll get very old people wanting to snorkel on the reef. Now, everyone knows the hazards and risks associated with elderly people snorkeling. You know, and we have to recognise that. You can't stop them from doing
it. Yeah, that's a very difficult question. As to what is enough for that sort of situation,
and ballparks even.
Yeah, well, look, it's probably fair to say that for a single incident, for one person being injured and even ending up a quadriplegic, awards of anything over, you know, 3 or 4 million would be very rare. But if you're conducting an activity where potentially multiple people could be killed, you could be exposed to much larger amounts. So I would think, I mean, these days, if you look at the public liability, which is sort of, when you're talking injury and damage, you probably should be considering similar sums insured as you are for public liability under professional indemnity if you have that injury and property damage risk exposed. The most common is probably still 10 million, but it is more and more increasing to 20 million, and in fact I think it's Queensland, because I do have a national role, so I'd get around a fair bit. But I know one of the councils, some councils now are requesting that their tenants and so forth have $20 million worth of public liability coverage as a requirement for them to lease their premises. So, but it is a bit of it's difficult to say. But I guess you need to take into account as when you're trying to decide on what sum insured. Have you got the potential there to have a catastrophic type accident that you could be liable for, or are you restricted more because you're only doing one-on-one type instructing or whatever, which obviously there is a little bit of a less risk there because you've got a less likelihood of multiple claims.
Have a case?
Yes, certainly. Yes, they do. Basically, as the club, to its own players, to opposition players, to spectators, they owe a duty of care to provide a safe facility for people to participate in that activity, whether they're playing or spectating, or whether they're on their team or whether they're on the opposition team. So certainly you have the potential for action to be taken by a player against his own coach or against his own club. And again, when you're looking at the insurance coverage, which would come under public liability, you just need to make sure, and generally speaking, it probably, because would be buying a specific policy for sport, it would generally be covered, but you need to have what's called insured versus insured cover, which means under those covers, you have everyone involved in the club covered, which includes the officials, it includes the coach, which even includes the players, just in case a player has action taken against him for who knows what reason, he kicks the ball into the crowd and kills someone or whatever. So you need to make sure that people who are insured under the policy, under the one policy, potentially you could have one person insured under that policy taking action against another person insured under that policy, and you need to make sure that that person is protected. So that's what is known as insured versus insured liability, which is important for exactly that reason. So it's sort of one of the finer points you need to be aware of, just to make sure you have got the appropriate wording for your risk exposure.
The safest bet would be, the least contentious bet would be to use the NES, National Employment Standards, in conjunction with the miscellaneous award. The miscellaneous award is basically the award that's there as the catch-all for people who aren't covered by any other specialist sector or industry award. It provides very minimal conditions of employment, very non-controversial, so it's a very low bar for which to approach the exercise of either providing minimum rates of pay and conditions and following that award, or building an enterprise agreement using that as your safety net for the better off overall test. But if you're looking at an organisation which is larger and more sophisticated, it would get to the mindset of the people that run it. Do they see themselves as part of the outdoor recreation sector, or do they see themselves as an adjunct to the education sector? If it was the later case, they would rely upon awards that were part and parcel of the education award structure. But if they were just as a for-profit organisation working in outdoor rec anywhere in the country, my strong view would be the amusements, events, etc. award at this stage would be a good starting place. But it gets down to the circumstances of the individual, what they see as their major core business, where they're located, and the bottom line is what their customers expect or the clients expect of them as an organisation. That would be one of the advantages of having a National Outdoor Leaders Award, because the modern award system is much more flexible than the awards that they replace, but they still work to a model. And that model is its assumption, as broadly as the assumption is, it's a 38-hour standard working week, and you don't work more than 10 hours a day, and you're always at home at night in your bed. Well, that's just not the case in the outdoor recreation sector. And where either an amendment to the existing modern award structure or the creation of an actual dedicated outdoor leader award would be advantageous, would be to pick up the nuances that are specific to this industry. That is, yes, there is scope of long days. Yes, there are 7-day operations and maybe even extended more than 7 days in the field with groups. Necessarily people have to be, because of the remoteness of where they're working, there with the people that are their clients or the people that they've got responsibilities for. But they're not necessarily working, they're passive spectators, as it were, to an event that's happening 24 hours a day. That is, someone might be asleep, but necessarily the person wakes up with a medical problem. Who's responsible? Well, it's the outdoor leader in charge of the group. They have to go and do something. Well, the point where they start doing something, what are they entitled to claim from their employer by way of remuneration? That's the difficulty, that we don't have those sorts of specific arrangements in all of those awards that I've referred to in my attachment paper, because they just don't comprehend the outdoor leaders industry. It's a unique business, and in fact, one of the major problems a lot of people have when they try to apply what modern award applies to this sector, people working for Fair Work Australia, is they don't fully comprehend the scope and the extent of the industry. They think outdoor recreation, oh yeah, camping might be involved with that. They don't think about white water rafting or abseiling or things of a great spectrum of undertakings and participations in this sector. So they'll give you an answer based on the information you give them. If you give them a narrow gauge of information, you'll get a narrow answer for them, which in the requirement on an overall circumstance might not be the right or accurate answer to be giving you as to what your obligations under what the appropriate award should be. The particularly large organisations, YMCA and the like, they've already got their enterprise agreements and had enterprise specific arrangements going back to work choices and probably before work choices under the former legislation prior to 2006. And many larger users of outdoor leader skills and expertise, in my experience, major educational institutions, private schools particularly, they inevitably have got their own enterprise arrangements for their staff, and necessarily people who hire staff to those education organisations, they have to marry up their rates of pay and conditions arrangements with what the employer's ability to pay is. And in relation to some of these organisations, there's a great disparity between what a large private school can possibly afford and what a small community-based organisation can afford. Fair Work Australia is a one-stop shop. Under the old arrangements, where there was work choices or prior to that, you had somebody that made an award, the Industrial Relations Commission, somebody that enforced the award, which was an industrial inspectorate, whether it was a federal or state, and then there was a magistracy that heard complaints as you do with OH&S issues. The Ombudsman is a different creature. Whilst it can enforce orders against employers, they're very much adopting, at least in this particularly early part of the life of the Fair Work Act, a more bracing exercise of saying to an employer, there is a complaint here, this is what we recommend you do, and they give you an opportunity to resolve the issue in the right manner, retrospectively in many cases. They don't automatically pick up the stick and start whacking over the head and saying, you are now fined X amount of thousands of dollars, and by the way, you have to pay all the money back to the employee if there's a wages claim. They'll say, listen, the appropriate award is this, or the interpretation of the award provision or agreement provision should be this, and you're given the opportunity, very liberal opportunity, to address the problem. So that's a different culture from bad old days under the previous systems, where the first thing the employer knew was they had a trade union official saying, pay this, or a workplace inspector saying, if you don't pay this, you'll be fined that. They don't do that now. They go to the point of saying, this is the problem, let's resolve it first. An opportunity is walked out the door on the 12th of March, because the 12th of March was the date by which submissions had to be into Fair Work Australia for amendments to, as part of a national award review, any modern award that any individual was covered by. And the opportunity could have been there to either amend a current modern award, the events, amusements, etc. award, to put in specific outdoor leaders provisions, but that's not to say that opportunities lasts somewhere along the line in future, and you need to have an industry approach to this. An application to Fair Work Australia to make an outdoor leaders award in the absence of anything else appropriate to it could be successful, but it would take a major submission, because as far as Fair Work Australia is concerned, it's created a perfect set of modern awards. It's got the opportunity to look at what's done so far now in the next 6 months, but beyond that it's going to be very hard in the absence of a genuine industry national approach. Individuals will find, as an employer or an individual worker, find it very difficult to initiate successfully a claim for the creation of a modern award, because the whole idea is to try and minimise award making in future, preferences or enterprise agreements. But it's not impossible, but it'd be very difficult, I suggest.